specific muscles. And make sure this is on. So we are going to be starting today. For those of you watching at home, you go to Moodle, you go to major muscles of the cervical, and you click that, and you're just going to, trust is such a harsh word sometimes. You're just going to have to trust me. This is going to, might seem a little weird at first, but it's going to get easier, it's going to get better, it's going to be clear, and then hopefully you will be confident in this stuff, and you'll be glad you learned it this way. So I'm going to be very transparent. I'm going to hold you accountable for 4 muscles. Only 4 muscles at the cervical. There are more muscles, but good gosh, I got you for 3 months. And so I'm going to use like basically the most, maybe muscles most involved, or the prime mover. You may have heard those before. But these principles that I'm teaching you can work through grad school. So in other words, as you go through grad school and you learn about scalenes and you learn about inter-osi, you can play these roles that I'm going to teach you. It was just like how you could play Monopoly. You could simplify it, or it could be a very, very complex game. Like there's different levels to this, okay? One of the limitations, it's a big limitation of 3-dimensional pulling muscles, is that a 2-dimensional picture, it's hard to see all 3 dimensions. It's actually impossible to see all 3 dimensions in a 2-dimensional picture. So that's why you got to look at different pictures. It's hard to look at a picture of a muscle from a certain view. It's easier to see like certain plane pull, but to see another plane pull, you got to see it from a different angle to see, oh, now I see how it's pulling forward. But if you just looked at it from the front, you have no idea how it's crossing the joints to pull certain ways, okay? So that's one of our limitations, that for us to be able to see muscles that have up to 3 dimensions of pull, we got to look at different angles. Even then, sometimes it's hard to see all the different dimensions of pull. So that's why I came up with, 20 years ago in Auburn, a shortcut, a cross-sectional approach to muscle function. It's one way to look at it. It's a tool that we could use to see how the muscles are pulling in all 3 directions with one picture. If I asked you name as many students as you could in like your sophomore homeroom class, or I gave you $5 for every person you'd name, I don't know about you, but I would probably visualize the class and say who sat in front of me, who sat behind me, who sat on the right side of us. I would visualize. You can imagine, name, or if I gave you $1 for every business you named around Costco, you would visualize, Gulf's here. We have a very visual mind. And so we know that muscles can only pull. And we also know that skeletal muscles pull in the directions of motion. That's what their functions are. Their function is to pull. The work that they do, just like a firefighter's job is to put out fires, but do they put out every fire? They try. Job is to try. Muscles pull in specific directions of motion. The work that they do is the concentric, the eccentric, the isometric, but they always pull in the same direction of motion. So what we're going to do is we're going to see these muscles for how they pull, and then apply our 310 and 415 techniques to see, well, are they working concentric? Are they working eccentric? Who do I need? How do they need? All right. So this is a cross-section of your neck. For those of you that are watching from home, this is page 3. If you have your device flat on your table, this makes a little bit more sense, because literally all I'm showing you is that your neck is somewhat circular, and I'm taking that and I'm putting it on your device on your floor. If you have your device like this, which I have to for us to see it, I have to rotate it for us to see it. All that is saying is that you're looking at the neck as if somebody was laying down. Does that make sense? So on the screen right here, that cross section is there. And if your device is laying on your table, then you would see the cross section like this. Okay. Now, what is in that cross section? Axes. You remember those from 310? What are axes? Those are points about which things can spin. So look at the red line. The red line represents our bilateral axis at our neck. Remember, bilateral, two sides, side to side. This is my right side, my left side. like Frankenstein, right? Frankenstein had a little bilateral axis going on there. What motions happen about our neck's bilateral axis? Flexion and extension, correct? All I'm trying to teach you is that for a muscle to be a flexion puller, it has to cross anterior. It has to cross the neck in the front, because muscles can only pull. It has to cross the neck in the front, anterior of the bilateral axis to pull chin to chest. Should make sense? And if a muscle is going to be a cervical extension puller, it has to cross the bilateral axis in the back, like pulling the back of my head to the back of my neck. Muscle function, how does it pull, is based off of two factors. One, does it cross the joint? If a muscle doesn't cross my knee, it's kind of hard to pull it at my knee. And then the second thing is, how does it cross? So all of these muscles that pull in these different directions of motion have to cross in specific ways in order to pull in a direction of flexion or extension or ulnar deviation or radial deviation. And it's all based on axis. The difference between me being a door closer and a door opener is, how do I cross the door? Am I on the outside of class or on the inside of the class? If I'm on the inside of the class, I pull in the direction of door close. If I'm on the outside of the class, I pull in the direction of door open. It's the same concept. So without even going into specifics, this is a cross-sectional view of our neck. Anterior is in the front. Posterior is on the back. This is the right side. This is the left side. So if I have muscles that I see in the front of the bilateral axis, those muscles are going to be flexion pullers, because that's how they cross. They cross in the front. The muscles can only pull. So if they're in the front of my bilateral axis, they're going to be flexion pullers. If I see muscles in the back of my bilateral axis, those are extension pullers, the extensors. What's this axis? The one that runs from the front to the back of me. You remember what that one was called? Anterior posterior. Not rocket science, anterior posterior. Like your Adam's apple, that's your NAP, guys. That's our anterior posterior axis. So doesn't it make sense that muscles that are on the right side of this teeter-totter are trying to pull my right ear to my right shoulder? They're right lateral benders if they're on the right side of my AP axis. And if it's on the left side, they're going to be left lateral bending pullers. So far, so bad? What if a muscle is in the front of the bilateral axis and on the right side of the AP axis? Sweet, that means it's pulling this way and that way. It's a combinational pull. Anterolateral, as they say. And if a muscle is posterolateral in the back and on the right side, it's pulling me here and it's pulling me there. If a muscle crosses in the front and it's a flexion puller, I know from our last class and reminder, oh, I need to extend if I want to stretch that puller. If it's pulling to the right lateral because it's on the right side of my neck, I need to bend to the left if I'm going to stretch the stuff that's pulling to the right. So the AP axis and the bilateral axis, anterior, posterior crossings is what's going to make a muscle a flexor or an extensor. And right and left-sided crossing is what's going to make a muscle a right lateral puller or a left lateral puller. Now we get to go outside. This was like the standard classroom. Now we get to go outside and play for recess. And at recess, they have a very popular merry-go-round. You get to go play in the merry-go-round. Our merry-go-round is our polar axis. For those of you that are looking on literally your polar axis, that's what you're going to play that's what you're going to spin the merry-go-round. Okay? Follow me here. Muscles that are trying to spin the merry-go-round. Remember, that's your neck. So what's attached to your neck? Your nose. Muscles that are trying to spin your merry-go-round to the right, those are going to be right transverse cervical rotation pullers. And muscles that are trying to spin your merry-go-round to the left are going to be left transverse cervical rotation pullers. And you're like, well, Campbell, how do you communicate who's a right or who's a left? It's super complicated. It's arrows. So think about it. That muscle, I'm going to teach you who it is. I'm just teaching you how the cross-sectional anatomy gives us 3 dimensions of pull in a world where it's hard to see 3-dimensional pull with 2-dimensional pictures. We're still going to look at pictures, but this is the so what. This is what tells you all of the different ways these muscles pull in up to 3 dimensions with one visual. So look, whatever the heck that is on the front right, I'm going to teach you what it is. But look at how that arrow is trying to spin the merry-go-round. If it was going to pull, it'd be trying to spin you to the left. That one right there is also trying to spin you to the left. Oh, those are left transverse cervical rotation pullers. And those 2 are trying to spin the merry-go-round to your right. So those are going to be right transverse cervical rotation pullers. That's how we do transverse plane. So without even knowing anything about these muscles yet, you should be able to tell me, hey, those 2 muscles that are anterior, whoever they are, those are flexors. And the 2 posterior muscles, those are extensors. And the 2 muscles on the right side of my neck, those are right lateral benders. And the 2 muscles on the left, those are left lateral. And the front left is working with the back right to spin in a direction of right transverse. And the front right is working with the back left to pull in a direction of left transverse. It gets easier, huh, Grace? The first day is always the toughest. So here we go. Here are your muscles. The right and the left sternocleidomastoids, and your right and left erector spinae. Your erector spinae is a group within a group. Guys, you have hundreds of erector muscles. Have fun, Grexter. But for this class, we're just going to basically say you have a group of erectors on the right side of the spine. Like you think about the spinous processes as like being like a border. No muscles cross that border. So you have a group on the right side and you have a group on the left side. Okay? And those muscles cross the erector spinae, right and left, cross in the back of your head, in the back of your neck. So that's why they're extension pullers. All right, so here's the muscles. We are going to look at pictures and I'm going to explain how they work, but I'm giving you the pieces. Notice these names of these specific muscles have nothing to do with pull. In fact, right and left sternocleidomastoid is a common way of naming muscles based off of origins and insertions, but it doesn't tell us how it pulls. So when I was in grad school, they were like, well, yeah, all you need to know is origin insertion. And I'm like, that doesn't necessarily tell you function. Give me a muscle that says adductor longus. Yeah, I can see how it pulls. Okay. So those are the muscles you're going to be accountable for your first test. These are their functions you're going to be accountable for their first test. Guys, I'm telling you, I'm going to teach you cross-sectional anatomy. Few people in the country teach cross-sectional anatomy. It works for me. It's worked for my students. I get feedback all the time from our former students showing other students cross-sectional anatomy. That being said, I will never ask you to draw a circle for points. But on the test, I'm going to give you scratch paper, and you can write as much as you want when the clock starts. Some people will write all their muscles, just lists. The problem with lists is some muscles work with some and some muscles don't work with others, so there's redundancy. With a circle, all you got to do is just learn that one class and who sits in it and see all the functions in one picture. We did this, right? So here I would need extensors, here I need flexors, here I need left laterals, here I need right laterals. So all that's saying is here I would need, we just got right. All right, A1. Start with the sternos. Sternocleidomastoids. Some of this, guys, is going to be semantics, but semantics is very important. When I say sternocleidomastoids plural, that means both sides. If I want to communicate one or the other, because they all they're plain, then I'll say the right sternocleidomastoid, the left sternocleidomastoid. These muscles only pull in one direction together. One plane. Two other ways, they pull in opposite directions. Can't assume. So the sternocleidomastoids. This is going to be fun. Grace can back me up. Two are going to be easy. One's going to be a little different. But that's why I get paid the small bucks. All right, guys. Sternum. Clavicle. So you have a muscle that has a sternal origin and a clavicular origin. And it runs, these two different origins blend into one common tendon and inserts in an area called the mastoid process, which is literally by the ear. It's that little hook on the ear. Now, how this muscle pulls. So if you just say sternocleidomastoid, like origin, insertion. Oh, I have no problem with origin insertion. Origin insertion is going to be very important. If you're palpating, you're going to know where they originate and insert. If you're a massage therapist, origin insertion is very important to get into origins and insertions of muscle. That's why you have massage therapy school. I got everybody in this room who has a vast different interest in background and what you want to do for 3 months. So my emphasis is function. What do these muscles do? How do they work? Concentric, eccentrically, isometric. Okay? So practically speaking, here's my sternocleidomastoids. This is be my left. Remember, it's my left. It crosses the bilateral axis in the front. So therefore, when it pulls, it's trying to like pull my ear to my chest. Does that make sense? So you could see the flexion pull of that muscle. Specifically, we see the flexion pull better on the photo of the left. Does that make sense? Because I can see the view of the bilateral axis. It's like I have a bilateral view, and I can see that muscle kind of pulling forward. That's a hard one to see from the photo on the right. So I don't know. What if it's running straight up and down? I don't have the depth. I don't have the depth in the photo on the right than I do from the photo on the left. What I mean by that is, on the photo on the left, you can see how it's running like front to back. You don't see that on the photo on the right. From the photo on the right, it literally might look like it's just running straight up. You see what I'm getting at? However, the photo on the right gives us a good view of the frontal plane pull of that muscle. So in other words, if this was a teeter-totter, I could see how the left would be trying to pull like my left ear down to my left shoulder. And my right would be trying to pull my right ear down to my right shoulder. So the view on the right gives me a much better view of the frontal plane pulls. The view on the left gives me a much better view of the sagittal plane pulls. But if you go to your circle, your cross-sectional circle, that one picture solidifies both of those functions. So in other words, the right and the left sternocleidomastoids cross anterior to the bilateral axis, flexion puller. The right is on the right side, and the left is on the left side. So literally, all you got to do is say, oh, what does the right sternocleidomastoid do in the sagittal plane? Ah, it's a flexion puller. What does it do in the frontal plane? Ah, it's a right lateral cervical bender. Does that make sense? We'll get to the transverse in a second. Who are the cervical flexors? So like we've used cervical flexors as a group before. Well, now we finally have like members of a team. Like, I'm using my flexors. Great. Who are those muscles? The left and right sternocleidomastoids. And this is where I sprinkle in a little biomechanics without even us realizing it. It just makes common sense. You have one muscle and a second muscle that are both pulling forward. But this one's trying to bend you to the right. It gets canceled by the one that's trying to bend you to the left. They cancel out in the frontal. I'm going to show you how they cancel out in the transverse, and they can work together when you need them to pull forward. Neutralizing functions. Okay. So the right sternocleidomastoid. How would I stretch it in the frontal plane? It's a specific muscle now. How do I stretch it? Well, first I got to ask myself, how does it pull? The right sternocleidomastoid is a right lateral puller. True? So how would I stretch it in the frontal plane? Wouldn't I want to bend to the left? That's your first application for a specific muscle. Now, in addition to being a right lateral puller, it's also a cervical flexor. So if I really wanted to stretch it more, if I really wanted to get at it, there you go. Yeah, I'd want to go side and back and mela. You stretch more because it's being stretched in 2 dimensions. That's how you can utilize some of this stuff. If you know how it pulls, there's a lot of information you can extract from it. I wouldn't stretch the left sternocleidomastoid the same way. The only thing I could do the same would be to extend. But if I wanted to stretch it isolated, stretch it more, I'd want to extend and bend to the right. Stretching it in 2 dimensions. And then we'll get to that third dimension. Third dimension is always the one that's different, but we're going to work it out. Sternocleidomastoids. All right. Here we go. Transverse plane, sternocleidomastoids. Let's get back to picture. God, this is so tough. There's not a perfect view. There's limitations of 2-dimensional pictures. So the only thing I can do is true or false. We know that this muscle, the sternocleido, where it originates, is going up and down, side to side, but it also has depth to it. What I mean is it starts more in front than where it finishes. Can't really see that here. You can see that here, but what this doesn't show you is the laterality of how it's getting there. In other words, your ear is more on the outside than your sternum. Limitations of two-dimensional pictures. So what Campbell is going to do is, I'm going to give you a three-dimensional model. I'm going to give you a three-dimensional model. Not because I want to, because I have to, because the limitations of 2D. Left sternocleidomastoid is literally trying. I'm going to change the origin, but the pull doesn't change. Is literally trying to pull my left ear forward sagittally, but also forward transverse. Like it's like an oblique. You could probably see it easier if I did this. Like if I always use the analogy, if you were bad, I don't know if anybody was mischievous like me, but if you were bad and your mom grabbed your ear and she pulled that one ear forward, it's twisted like this. So by her pulling your left ear forward, isn't that making her want to make you look to your right? Right transverse? Think of it as the merry-go-round. I can pull on the right side of the merry-go-round and make it want to spin to the left. True. Are you in 415? Oh, we need to find your CPR class because this is not it. That's okay. You know who's teaching you. I'll go to that all garments and shame. That's okay. So this shame is our system. Make sure she finds CPR. She doesn't take care of it. Okay. Thank you. Getting better. Getting better. Oh, so sweet. You know, it's my passion. You know, helping people find where they're supposed to go. Cannot wait to tell my therapist about it. Okay. Does this make sense? It's on the left side, but that just means it's going to pull to the left frontally. But transversely, it has obliquity to it, just like an oblique. So the left side is actually trying to make you look to your right. The left sternocleidomastoid is a right transverse cervical rotator because that's how it pulls. I know exactly, I'm going to explain why it doesn't make sense. I'm going to explain to you why your brain is like, don't listen to the Delcom boy. I got you back. The reason is because when we are in anatomical position, our erector spinae, I'm going to teach you about the erector spinae, but when I look to the right, the erector spinae is now coming all the way from the back left, and it's being stretched to the front. And I feel that stretch here, but all of a sudden you want to give credit to this being the same muscle as this, and it's not the same muscle. It's like a replacement. This muscle, look, this is the reason I put the tape, is to show you how it gets shorter when you look to the right, and how this muscle gets longer when you look to the left. Shorter, longer. Because think about it, my left ear is further away from my sternum. My left ear is closer to my sternum. Your brain's just not going to like that. I'm telling you right now, your brain is not going to like that. But that's not my problem. My problem is to tell you how these things are working, okay? Now, if I was going to look at our circles and say, what's the so what? Give me the so what functions. I'd say, okay, left and right sternocleidomastoids. For guys at home, this is page 4. The right and left sternocleidomastoids are cervical flexors. That's how they pull. The right is a right lateral, the left is a left lateral. The left is a right transverse puller, and the right is a left transverse puller. Does that make sense? All right, fun time. How would I stretch? What position would I want to put my neck? How would I stretch the right sternocleidomastoid in the transverse plane? Don't do it right away. Give it some thought, and I'm going to teach you the process on how not to be confused. But that's the question. I think that's a pretty practical question. Maybe you're in a lab, or maybe you're in a clinic, and they said, oh, the right sternocleidomastoid is very tight. We're going to stretch it out in all 3 planes. Well, you have to know how it pulls. And we know how it pulls sagittally. That's easy. We know how it pulls frontally. That's easy. This is the one that's more complicated. How would I stretch the right sternocleidomastoid in the transverse plane? Would I want to look to the left, or would I want to look to the right? Don't answer it. Give it some thought. These are the key learning moments that really we can build a foundation on. Talk with your neighbor. Do what I do. Talk to the voices in your head. Grace, was she upset?
Yeah, she was just very.
Bless her heart. Good. Thank you. Question. How would we stretch the right sternocleidomastoid specifically in the transverse plane? I'm going to give you a hint. If you know how a muscle pulls, if you know the direction of pull of a muscle, any movement in that direction, that muscle's getting short. Any motion in the other direction, that muscle's getting longer. Big hint. If we're trying to stretch the right sternocleidomastoid, do I want to look to my left or do I want to look to my right? I want to look to my right. That is going to mess with you. It will. But I have to show you proof. I have to show you proof. Here's my right sternocleidomastoid. And when I look to my right ear is getting further away from my sternum. It's getting longer here. The reason you don't want to believe it is because your left erector spinae is also getting stretched. And as you move your neck, that left erector spinae is now taking up the space that your brain wants to say is your left sternocleidomastoid. So you are stretching your right sterno and your left erector. but your left erector didn't become your left sternum. I'm hoping that this example proves how important these concepts are, because again, if you're in a clinic and you're trying to stretch a muscle and we don't know exactly what positions to put it in, but you will. You will. You're going to learn. You're going to use the tools I'm going to give you, and next thing you know, y'all going to be making some really cool stuff with it. Does this make sense? The right sterno is pulling in a direction of left transverse. So if I actually twist to my left, it's going to be shorter. I want to look to the right to stretch it in the transverse plane. It's tough, but it's true. Don't trust me. Trust the cable. Tape. All right. How about this? Which sternocleidomastoid would be working if I was pushing on my left side of my head this way? Would I be activating my left or my right sternum? You're going to literally make me stay like this? Left or right? Good, good. Process. Don't go right to the answer. External force is trying to bend you to the right. I need muscles that are trying to bend me to the left. To prevent that, the left sterno is one of those muscles. And we'll do the erector on Monday, but baby steps. Now, what if same external force, hand pushing on my left side, trying to cause right lateral. From here, you observe this motion. Now we have an agonistic muscle and we have motion. We should be able to figure out contraction. And Grace, feel free to chime in. One of the reasons I emphasize agonistic groups so much is because it has pull, the motion. It has motion in it. It would be really tough to say left sternocleidomastoid allowing right lateral through eccentrics. That'd be really tough. Because one is an origin insertion name and the other one is motion. Some muscles are going to have these weird Latin names. So it's okay for us to say left sternocleidomastoid, but that muscle is a left lateral bender. And a left lateral bender allows right lateral bending through. Get it? Guys, you know where else in the country they teach this process? Right? Because this is my process. And I'm going to be honest with you, the reason it works for me is because I have dyslexia. And I couldn't understand my old teachers playing fast and loose. Well, wait, this doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense. There has to be a way to make it make sense every time. This is that way. Does it take a couple steps? Yeah, but I'd rather be right. I'd rather be consistent. But still to this day, if a student comes in and asks me a question about an exercise or muscle, what is the external force trying to do to you? What muscles do I need in terms of the direction of their pull? Who are those muscles? And then when we get into contractions, let's bring it back to direction of pull. Your time. All right, how about this one? Sternocleidomastoids, question. Pushing in front of my right side of my face. So now I'm not trying to bend, I'm trying to twist. Okay? So I'm pushing, I'm doing a manual muscle test. Here's the question. What sternocleidomastoid am I testing strength? I'm pushing on the right side of my face. I'm trying to create rotation. And I'm asking you to tell me which sternocleidomastoid am I testing strength? I'm pushing on the right side. Give that some thought, with your friends. And look, even if the person that sits next to you is an enemy, they don't have to know that. Just get them past the class first. And then don't invite them to your birthday party. I mean, that's what I do. I'm joking. Y'all all invited to my birthday party. All right, I'm not going to answer it, but let's just make sure we're all on the same page. What motion is this force trying to cause at my neck? Left transverse. The external force is trying to cause left transverse cervical rotation. If the external force is trying to twist your head to the left, the last thing you want are muscles that are trying to twist that way too. If the force is trying to twist you to the left, you need muscles that are trying to twist you to the. So now all you got to do is say, well, who is that muscle that's pulling to the right transversely? Left sternocleidomastoid muscle. Did you do it? Did you get it? I thought you were bopping. I thought you were celebrating my birthday. Yes. Okay. Now remember, this is isometric, okay? So there won't be motion. Oh, God, please don't let me get tetanus or something. I'll figure it out. I won't figure it out. Think. Tell my wife about it. Okay. Force is trying to do this. So wouldn't it make sense? I need muscles that are trying to do this. I need this muscle. Everybody, let's try this. Everybody take your fingers like this. I want you to put your thumbs on your sternocleido joints, and I want to put your fingers on your ears, your mastoids. Okay. Now, together, I want you to see how they pull forward. Cool. Now, I want you to drop your right hand. I want you to see how frontally it's pulling left ear, left shoulder. This is a trick. Transversely, literally take your fingers and push your ear forward. That's how it's pulling. Now, it's not pushing, it's pulling, but it's literally trying to pull your left ear to go line up with your sternum. Does that make sense? So if you have an external force trying to make you look to your left, you need this muscle to, oh God. You need the left to pull you to the right. Was today enlightening? Yes. Does it get more complicated than this? But this is a good start. This is a good start. You know why this is a good start? Because we shouldn't assume. Guys, I'm going to teach you about how external obliques on one side work with internal obliques on the other side in certain planes. Not all planes, but in certain planes. So this is a good circumventing of our expectations. Ring the bell and salivate. I'm trying to teach you the bell rings. Don't salivate. Figure it out. You have a good one.